Hey hoes, and welcome back to another episode of Morning Cup of H.O.E podcast. So hoes, I feel like this is going to be such a random episode because I don't know why I've been struggling like these past few weeks trying to record an episode. It's just like, I feel like I can't plan it out. I can't execute it. Like a whole been struggling. So I figured I'm going to just push it out today. I'm going to do it and I hope it turns out well. But how are y'all hoes doing this week? It's been like 2 weeks since we last talked and I'm ready to get into it. So I wanted to talk to y'all today about really being your authentic self. So I guess I want to start off by asking y'all, do y'all feel like you are being your authentic self at all times? And I apologize if y'all hear my husband screaming in the background. He is back there playing the game and I was like, I'm gonna just record and hope y'all can't hear him, but if y'all can, that's what it is, and I apologize. But do y'all feel like y'all are being your authentic self at all times? And what I mean by that is like really being genuinely yourself. Like when what you think and say really aligns with your actions. Like you're not thinking about doing something and then doing something else because of outside factors. Like you're really living in what you want to do. So like, do y'all feel like y'all are doing that every day? And if so, like, I'm really proud of y'all because I know it could be so hard to be authentically yourself at all times. So I'm really proud of you if you are able to do that. And I need some tips on how to do that. But if you're not being your authentic self every day, I want to ask you, why aren't you doing that? And I want to just say that I really resonate with you because I feel like I can't be my authentic self all the time. But why do you think that is that you're not being your authentic self? Really think about that. And the reason that I wanted to talk to y'all about this today is because, like I said, I feel like I'm not my authentic self at all times, or really at all. Like I feel like there's very few people in my life that I'm really 100% authentic with. Like I'm not trying to hide anything at all. Like I am who I want to be in their presence. There's only a few people like that. And I realized that, just kind of a quick story. So I was at work and we were talking about having to do this presentation about being your authentic self. And I did this presentation last year, but I had to do it again this year. So it really just brought up kind of the fact that I was telling students, like, you know, you want to be your authentic self when you're going into companies. Like you don't want to go to a company where you feel like they're not aligned with your goals and things like that, which honestly, I think that's amazing. Like, you know, that is the truth. Like you don't want to go into a company where you feel like you can't be yourself. You don't want to go into a company where you feel like, you know, your values aren't aligned with theirs or you can't meet your goals and things like that. That is 100% true. And I was preaching this to these kids, but then I realized me preaching it to the kids, I kind of felt like a fraud because at the end of the day, I know that when I go to work, I'm not being authentically myself. I'm code switching when I go there. I only show them a portion of what I want to show them. And I'm not saying that when you're being your authentic self, you have to like expose everything about your life, because I do think that there's parts of your life that you can withhold because it's really your decision of what parts that you want to share with people. But I just feel like they don't really get any parts of me at work. Like I'm code switching. So like, if y'all don't know what that is, it's just like when y'all kind of changing your voice to sound, I don't even want to say more professional, because that's a whole different thing that I could go down a line of what it means to sound professional, because that's of course kind of rooted in that white supremacy, but I don't want to go into that because that could be a whole different topic. But you know, of course I'm code switching. I don't talk about certain things that I feel like my coworkers wouldn't understand. I'm not going to expose them to my full self because I just feel like that's not what they want to see in a workplace. And I don't want to be my authentic self and them look at me differently. So I really kind of felt like a fraud talking to these kids about this and preaching this to them, and kind of feeling like I was setting false expectations to them of what the workplace should look like and, you know, how they should be able to react. Because although that is the goal of being able to be your authentic self at work, I just feel like in corporate America, we're not there yet, especially for minorities. We're not able to be authentically ourselves at all times. So I really kind of felt like a fraud there. But yeah, so that was just kind of a side note. So kind of going back to why I really wanted to talk about this topic, of course that, but then just going back to the fact that I feel like that I can't be my authentic self, you know, at work or in my real life. And I feel like one of the main reasons, and y'all can tell me if y'all agree with this, is I just feel like we're so used to being what other people expect us to be, or really what we think people want us to be, because a lot of times we set those expectations on ourselves versus what like people are telling us they want for us. So, I may go into like a party and I'm acting a certain way because I expect that that's what people want to see, but nobody has ever actually told me like, oh, when you're at a party, you need to act this way. Like, I really feel like I start to adjust depending on my surroundings, and I act that way depending on who I'm around. And I feel like because of that, our personality is not really our own a lot of time. And a lot of times because of that, we can't really distinguish who we are really at our core, because what we do. And once again, I'm going to say I'm speaking for myself, because if you are one of those people who just feels like you've gotten to that point in your life where you can be authentically yourself, no matter who you're around, like you're going to speak the same that you always speak. You're going to voice your opinion. You're going to, you're just really not going to care about what anybody else thinks. You're going to be the person that you are, no matter who you're around. Once again, I commend you for that, because that is an extremely hard thing that I think a lot of people struggle with. So I really do commend you for that. But for me personally, I feel like a lot of times I feel like my personality isn't my own, because I am trying to adjust depending on who I'm around, and I can't really be my authentic self. And sometimes it's just like, well, what is my authentic self? Because in my mind, it's just like, well, when I'm with this person, this is who I am. When I'm with this person, this is who I am. When I'm in this situation, this is who I am. And in my mind, it's like, well, I'm just different for every situation. But I feel like at the core, every single person has someone that they are. Everyone has a personality that they want to put out there. They have thoughts and beliefs and opinions and, really a foundation of who they are. And we can display that in all situations. And I think it's a lot of times that we're scared to do that. So yeah, just going back to the fact that I feel like it's hard to know who we truly are. We know exactly who we're expected to be in those situations, but we don't know who we want to be, because we just put on this facade continuously of who we are. So I was really just thinking about how beneficial it is to just be genuinely yourself. So in this episode, I wanted to just kind of go over like what I think personally the benefits of being your authentic self is, but also the struggles, because a lot of times when we're looking at, making changes, we always talk about what the benefits of things are, but we don't talk about why we haven't done that. Like, what's the struggle, why we can't get there to be able to work through it. We only talk about the benefits. So I want to talk about both sides of what I think the benefits are. So first of all, I think one of the main benefits that I'm looking at when I'm thinking of authentic communicate or being authentically yourself is attracting like-minded people. I feel like if you start to be authentically yourself, you'll attract people who think like you. You'll attract people who, like the same things as you, that want to do the same things as you, who, are on the same path as you. And I'm not saying that in life you want people who are exactly the same as you, because of course we want people who have different perspectives to help us grow. We want people who are doing different things that could put us on and things like that. But I think by being your authentic self, you're going to have people who are more aligned with you, who can help you grow, who can take you to that next level, versus you being around people who are not necessarily people who are aligned with your goals. Because I think when you start to put yourself in situations where people aren't aligned, you're dragging yourself down. For instance, if you want to fit in so badly with people who are going out all the time and going to parties and drinking and getting high and doing all this stuff. And once again, I'm not judging. If that's what you like to do, that's what you like to do. And I think the reason that I'm using that specific scenario is because I feel like in my younger days, I was around those type of people. I wanted to go to the club all the time because that's what other people were doing, even though I genuinely knew that that's not what I like doing. But I figured like, oh, we're young, that's what people like to do, we should still, we can continue to do that. And I kept putting myself in those situations over and over and over, because that's the type of people I was hanging out with. But what I realized is if I showed that that's not what I like to do, and I started kind of showing other hobbies that I had, I would attract people who like doing different things, versus me keep attracting the same people, because that's the environments I'm putting myself in. Those are the people I'm putting myself around. I wasn't being authentically myself, so I kept attracting people who were putting on that same facade as me, or people who really enjoyed that lifestyle of the facade that I was putting on. I wasn't attracting people who were bettering my life or helping me move towards the steps that I wanted to move towards, because I I wasn't putting that out there. I wasn't being authentically myself in order to attract those types of people. So I think that's so important to be able to be your authentic self in that way in order to, attract those people and move yourself forward. And then I think also by being your authentic self, you're also opening opportunities for yourself. So what I realized, and I know once again, it's easier said than done, but even at work, for instance, if I start voicing, my interests, if I start voicing, things that I do well, just voicing things that make me happy, that could move me into a different position where I'm doing something that I genuinely enjoy versus I'm not being authentically myself, and now they're putting me in a box of what they think that I can do. So for me being a diversity recruiter, obviously they're like, oh, she's Black. She can recruit Black people. Like, obviously that's what she wants to do. But if that's not something I was passionate about and they're just putting me in that box because I'm Black and I'm just agreeing to it because I'm not being authentically myself and showing who I am or who I want to be, I can't be mad at them for putting me in that box. So I think by being authentically yourself, you'll continue to open up new avenues for yourself, new opportunities, and you'll get so much further. And I know that it's hard to do that, like whether that's at work or in your social life, because I feel like it is so normalized for people to fit in versus standing out. Like when you start to stand out, people look at you as weird or like want to know what you're doing. And I'm fine with that. At this point in my life, I think I'm fine with being looked at as weird. I've been looked at that way as in my whole life. And I think when I was younger, like even within my family, they always looked at me as the weird one. Like they even told me I was the weird one. And I don't think that it ever came from a place of negativity. It just came from a place of, okay, Imani likes different things. Imani does things differently, things like that. And they would say, I'm the weird one. And when I was younger, I looked at that as a bad thing. Like I wanted to figure out how to fit in. I wanted to figure out how to do things in a way where other people were doing things. But as I got older, what I realized is that weirdness is my uniqueness. That's things that are going to make me different and make me grow and be able to have different opportunities that other people in my family may not have. And I'm not saying that's anything wrong with the people in my family, but because of my uniqueness, we have different paths that we're supposed to go on, and we have to realize that. And I know it's hard to say that because a lot of times we're scared of people judging us. We're scared of people not wanting us to succeed or people not thinking that we can do things. But when you start standing in your authenticity, you're going to once again attract those people who want you to succeed. You're going to attract people who are on the same path as you. So you can't look at those people who are looking down on you as someone that's going to stop you from reaching your goals. And I'm not saying that once you start being your authentic self, like everything's just going to be, rainbows and whatever. Like it's not going to be amazing at first, because if you're surrounding yourself right now with people that are loving this facade, then you may lose people. Like I'm not saying that once you start being your authentic self that everybody is gonna love it and support you and be so happy for you that you're being your authentic self. That's not the case. You may lose people in that process. And honestly, those people that you're going to lose are not important, because those people don't want to see you succeed in your full light. They want to see you succeed in this facade that you've been putting on for this whole time. So I think what you have to realize is that the people that you build on that journey to your authenticity, those are the people that are going to be with you for the rest of your life. Those are going to be the people that really want you to succeed. Those are going to be the people that encourage you, help you move forward, want you to succeed, and are going to help you succeed most importantly. And I think one of the most important questions that we should ask ourselves as we're in that process of trying to learn how to be authentically ourselves, or, really changing who we are the people that you're changing yourself for living in a space or living a life that you want to live? Because if that answer is no, then you have to ask yourself, why are you imitating them? Why are you trying to live up to their standards? Why are you trying to put yourself in that same space if they're not where you want to be? Because at the end of the day, if you're aligning yourself with people who aren't, going in the right direction that you want to go in, or aren't living a life that you aspire to be, how are you going to get there? You can't find your purpose by not doing things to work towards your purpose. You can't find your purpose by being around negative people. You can't find your purpose by being in a place that doesn't have that energy to make changes in your life. You have to really think about how you're living your life and who you're putting yourself around, because like they say, birds of a feather flock together. And if somebody is not in a place that you want to be and you continue to be there with them, you're never going to reach those goals of yours. All right, hoes. So let's quickly go over some barriers of being your authentic self, because I said at the beginning that we was going to talk about some, but I feel like I didn't really incorporate any in it yet. So let's talk a little bit about some barriers. So I guess first, what do y'all think are some barriers to being your authentic self? Like, what do you think has been stopping you? Because I feel like for everybody, it could be completely different. What I say my barriers are can be completely different from what you say yours are or somebody else. So I guess really think about what your barriers are and how you can change those, or how you can learn to work with those in order to be your authentic self. I'll talk about some things that I've heard people say, especially like when I've done these presentations, or even things that I can relate to myself. So one of the first things that I think is a big barrier to being your authentic self is really that fear of resistance. So what I mean by fear of resistance is that like you feel like people aren't going to accept you if you do start to be your authentic self. And that could be because like you've been acting this certain way for so long. People have gotten to know you in this facade that you have been putting on and things like that. So you changing, you don't think they're going to accept you. But like I said previously, if people don't accept you, then those people aren't meant to be in your life. People who really want to see you succeed are going to accept that you may have to change in order to be, your higher self or get towards your purpose. So that fear of resistance is just something that you should put past your mind, because obviously everybody is not going to like it, but you can't let that stop you from being who you want to be because you're scared of how other people are going to react. So another one that I see a lot of people saying is really that expectation of others. And I think that kind of actually does go along with resistance, but the expectations from others, I kind of wanted to put that, specifically say this one separately, because this one is interesting because it could be two things. It could be like self-imposed expectations or expectations people actually placed on you. So what I mean by that is like, if it's a self-imposed expectation, it's what you think people want to see from you, what you think people expect of you. And that could be based on what they've said about other people. That could be based on what you've seen on social media, like what the standards are. That could just be, you overheard people talking and now you're like, okay, this is the standard. This is how I need to act. This is how people expect me to be. And you put those kind of guidelines on yourself, those expectations on yourself. And now you're starting to act in a specific way in order to meet those expectations, even though nobody has actually outlined that for you. Nobody has said they expect you to act that way. Nobody is holding you to these standards except for yourself. So those self-imposed expectations could really be detrimental because you're forcing yourself to do this when nobody else is expecting you to. Nobody else is holding you to this standard. Nobody else would be angry if you changed, but because you've had these expectations that you've come up with yourself, you're finding it hard to break free from that, and you keep acting a certain way from that. And then it could be on the other side where it's actual expectations that people have placed on you. And that could be when you're starting a job, they may tell you exactly how you're expected to dress, how you're expected to talk, how you're expected to, interact with people, or your parents have set expectations of what they expect you to do with your life. Like, I expect you to go to college. I want you to marry so-and-so. Like, they may have set expectations, and now you're living within those expectations because they specifically told you that that's what they want you to do. But even with those expectations, you have to realize that these people are not you. They are not living your life. They are not going on your journey. They do not know what your purpose is. So even when people put these expectations on you, you have to think about the fact that you may have to break free from those expectations. You may have to change from what those expectations are. You may have to sit down and talk to them and let them know that although you appreciate their opinions, although you appreciate everything they've done for you, you cannot live your whole life falling within those expectations, because that is not allowing you to be your authentic self. And it's so important to be able to have these conversations. And it's hard. It is so hard to do it, especially when it's people like your parents, like people that you really respect, people that, want the best for you. And they think that these expectations that they are setting for you is setting you up for success. But honestly, it could be holding you back from your higher self, your purpose, who you're meant to be. So you have to be willing to break free from those expectations, even though it may make people mad. But at the end of the day, like I've always said, people who really love you, they will support you in your journey and they want to see you succeed. And then I think one of the last barriers that I wanted to talk about is just habit. And I think this one is kind of hard because it isn't necessarily something that you're going to think about or something that you're going to see happening. But when you've been acting a certain way for so long, you don't even notice when you're doing it. And an example of that I was just talking about when I was doing my presentation is code switching. So when I go to work, I automatically code switch. It's not like when I go in a meeting with my boss, I'm like, okay, Imani, you need to code switch. How are you going to do this? Like, it's like a switch that automatically flips on and off depending on who I'm with. It's not something that I have to think about. It's automatic. So when something becomes habit, you just automatically start doing it and you don't have to think about it. So in situations like that, you have to make an effort to realize when you're doing it and stop yourself. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but at least in your regular life, like doing little things to, show who you authentically are. And when you're not realizing it and maybe not even changing it right away, but at least acknowledging it, taking note of that. So when it happens again, maybe you can change it. And those are like 3 of the biggest barriers that I wanted to talk about. But of course, there's so many more barriers. Like I said, everybody's life is different. Everybody's perspective is different. It could be something so little for a barrier. Actually, I'm thinking of another one as I'm saying it. And one of the main things, like I talked about at the beginning, for a barrier of being your authentic self is the fact that you don't know who your authentic self is. When you've been acting this way for so long, you don't know who you are. You don't know what your hobby should be. You don't know what you enjoy doing. You don't know what you like. You don't know what your purpose is. So saying being your authentic self, as simple as that should be, it's not, because you don't know what that authentic self is. So I think that's really exploring who you are, allowing yourself to do things that make you happy, and eventually you'll get to that point where you realize who you are and who that authentic self is, who authentically Imani is, like who I want to be, who I feel comfortable being, and being able to stay aligned with that no matter who I'm around, what I'm doing, what situations I'm in. I'm always going to live in that, saying that I'm authentically Imani. So I want y'all to kind of take away just really figuring out who your authentic self is if you haven't figured that out. And if you have figured that out and you know exactly who you want to be, starting to figure out situations and events where you can just authentically be yourself in little scenarios. And I don't mean like going and automatically, showing everybody who you are, showing every aspect of yourself, because once again, you choose what part of yourself you want to share. So if you authentically don't want to share anything and you want to put on this facade, perfect. But if there's a part of you that is just put on a facade because that's what you expect people want from you, and you want to be able to show this, you want to be able to show who you are, then you need to figure out how to do that. Because one thing that I realized is not being able to be yourself, you're never going to be happy. You're never going to genuinely enjoy being in those situations, because you're always thinking of your next move, the next thing that you're going to say, because you're trying to figure out how to fit in. You're trying to figure out what people expect from you. And that is stressful. And I know nobody wants to live the rest of their life doing that. And we've come this long doing it. So at some point, we're going to want to change that. And I want to be my authentic self. And I think I'm just making steps every day to do that. And I hope that y'all can do the same. So I want to say, hoes, thank you so much for coming to another episode of Morning Cup of H.O.E. podcast. I want y'all to be your authentic self going forward. Make sure y'all are following on all platforms, also leaving a review and letting me know what other episodes y'all want to hear. I look forward to talking to y'all hoes soon. Have an amazing week. Peace.